And tell me, have you ever felt like certain memories from your past seem to haunt you? Like those marks that no matter how much time passes, never really fade away? Some pains insist on staying, and sometimes they even seem to grow stronger over the years. Now what if, instead of running from these memories, you could turn them into the most valuable part of your story? From an early age, we grow up with this illusion that life should be linear, flawless, without mistakes. We're taught to hide our failures, erase the tough moments, and move on as if nothing ever happened. Because of course, in today's world, everything that breaks is discarded, whether it's an object, a plan, or even a person. But what happens when life inevitably breaks us in half? What do we do with those cracks? Maybe it was an unexpected failure, an irreparable loss, a disappointment that left deep scars. And our first reaction is always the same: to try to forget, to erase the traces, to pretend it never happened. But there's a problem with that. These wounds don't disappear just because we want them to. On the contrary, they hide, they linger, silent, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And without realizing it, we start carrying an invisible weight, denying entire parts of our own story. But what if there was another way to look at all of this? In Japan, there is a philosophy that can completely change the way we see the past. A tradition that not only accepts imperfections, but transforms them into something beautiful and powerful. An art that teaches us that every scar, every crack, every moment of pain can become a golden mark on our journey. Imagine a delicate, almost fragile porcelain vase. It slips from someone's hands, falls to the ground, and shatters. In the West, the immediate reaction would be obvious: throw it away. After all, something broken loses its value, right? But in Japan, there is an art that sees this moment in a completely different way, not as an end, but as a new beginning. This art is called Kintsugi, the technique of repairing broken objects with lacquer mixed with gold. And here's the most fascinating part. Instead of hiding the damage, Kintsugi turns it into the most precious detail of the piece. Each crack, each scar, instead of being concealed, is highlighted. What was once a flaw now becomes the most beautiful feature of its new identity. Legend has it that this technique was born in the 15th century when Shogun Ashikaga Yoshimasa broke his favorite tea bowl. He sent it for repair, expecting it to be restored to its former glory, but to his disappointment, the piece was returned patched with rough metal staples, functional, yet lacking any aesthetic care. Unsatisfied, he challenged Japanese craftsmen to find a more elegant way to restore it. The result? The birth of Kintsugi. But listen, Kintsugi is not just about fixing ceramics. It's a philosophy of life. It is connected to an even deeper concept, Wabi-Sabi, the idea that there is beauty in imperfection, in the passage of time, in the authenticity of things. In the West, we spend our lives chasing perfection, as if we are only worthy of admiration if we hide our flaws. In Japan, the perspective is different. The marks we carry are part of our story, and denying them would be like denying who we truly are. And here's the point. Notice how this goes against everything we've been taught. From an early age, we get used to hiding our flaws, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual. We create edited versions of ourselves as if life were a social media feed where we only show the best angles and the perfect moments. But let's be honest, no one goes through life without cracks. And what if, instead of trying to erase them, we illuminated them with gold? Kintsugi invites us to redefine our scars, to understand that they don't diminish our value. On the contrary, they are what make us unique. Every pain we've overcome, every failure we've faced, every disappointment that has shaped us, all of it is part of our story. And our story deserves to be told, not hidden. Now, think for a moment. If you could apply Kintsugi to your own life, what cracks would you turn into gold? If we break an object, we know it can be fixed. But what happens when the one who breaks is us? When it's our own mind that cracks, shattered by invisible wounds? How do you repair something that can't be touched, yet weighs on you as if it had form? That's what trauma is like. Silent but devastating. It seeps into the mind and body without asking permission, changing the way we think, feel, and see the world. And contrary to what many believe, trauma isn't just a painful memory from the past. It shapes the present, guiding us in ways we don't even realize. As psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk, author of The Body Keeps the Score, explains, trauma isn't something that simply fades with time. It settles in. It manifests, and in ways we don't always recognize. It can show up as anxiety that comes out of nowhere, as an irrational fear of situations we don't even understand, or as that persistent feeling of being disconnected from our own life, as if we're merely watching it happen rather than truly living it. The problem? In the Western world, we've been taught to ignore emotional pain. The script is always the same. Get over it, forget the past, move on, as if scars could simply disappear through willpower alone. But does it really work that way? The philosophy of Kintsugi invites us down a completely different path. Instead of denying the cracks, it teaches us to recognize and transform them. And modern science is proving that this approach makes perfect sense. Van der Kolk explains that true healing begins when we stop running away and finally face our pain with compassion. He says, as long as you hide your feelings, you will be at war with yourself. Hiding your pain consumes an immense amount of energy and prevents you from fully living. In other words, we don't become free by ignoring pain. We become free by understanding it, embracing it, transforming it. Just as Kintsugi takes a broken object and turns it into art, we can do the same with our inner scars, but only if we have the courage to look at them. Now pause for a moment and think, is there something in your life that you've been avoiding facing? A troubling memory, a past mistake, something you've buried but that keeps resurfacing? Kintsugi does not teach us to pretend that everything is fine. On the contrary, it shows us that our story, with all its flaws, cracks, and marks of time, is precisely what makes us unique. So what if, instead of hiding your scars, you illuminated them with gold? If there's one thing life teaches us, it's that there's no going back. The past doesn't change. The losses, the mistakes, the pain, it has all already happened. But there is a fundamental difference between reliving the past and accepting it. Most of us try to erase the painful parts of our own stories. We avoid certain memories, ignore uncomfortable feelings, and when something reminds us of an old wound, we look away. We do this because we believe that accepting pain means being trapped by it. But the truth is quite the opposite. Acceptance is the only real path to freedom, and that is exactly what Kintsugi teaches us. This ancient Japanese art doesn't seek to hide cracks, it makes them part of the beauty of the piece. Broken ceramics become even more valuable when their fractures are filled with gold. And what about us? We too can become stronger when we stop denying our scars and learn to give them new meaning. But how does this translate into real life? To start, we must see our scars as part of our identity. In Japan, a vase restored with Kintsugi is not seen as flawed. On the contrary, it becomes unique, irreplaceable. Its golden cracks tell a story of resilience and overcoming adversity. Now what if we looked at our own scars that way? What if, instead of hiding them, we saw them as proof of our strength? The pain we endure shapes who we become, and that in itself is powerful. But the first step toward this transformation is to stop resisting. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists." And he was right. Denying what happened doesn't make it disappear. On the contrary, the more we try to suppress a feeling, the stronger it becomes within us. Acceptance doesn't mean approval or liking what happened. It simply means recognizing that the past cannot be changed, but the way we deal with it can. Kintsugi doesn't try to conceal the cracks. It embraces them, it highlights them, and maybe we should do the same with our own stories. And then comes the next step, transforming pain into learning, into purpose. Have you ever noticed that many of the most inspiring people we know have been through deep challenges? Some write books, others help those who have gone through something similar. Some simply choose to live with more lightness and gratitude because they know what it means to suffer. Pain can destroy, but it can also be a gateway to something greater. Now think about this. If your pain could become something valuable, like the gold in Kintsugi, what would you create with it? The healing process doesn't happen overnight, and that's okay. But the essence of Kintsugi reminds us of a simple yet powerful truth. It's okay to need time to rebuild, because when we're ready, we will be more beautiful, stronger, and above all, more authentic than ever. The past can be a burden or a work of art. It all depends on how we choose to see it. So often we look back and feel regret, resentment, even shame. We catch ourselves thinking, what if I had done things differently, or why did this happen to me? But these questions don't change anything. On the contrary, they trap us in an endless cycle of guilt and pain. The philosophy of Kintsugi offers us a new perspective. The past doesn't have to be a weight. It can be the foundation for something beautiful and meaningful. Just as a broken ceramic piece can be rebuilt with gold, our stories, no matter how painful, can be redefined. Now think about this. What story do your scars tell about you? In Kintsugi, every crack in a mended vase has meaning. Some speak of falls, others of unexpected impacts, but all of them represent something that endured time and became even stronger. And you are no different. Many people believe that their pain makes them weak. But what if the opposite were true? What if each wound was actually a symbol of your strength? Someone who has faced rejection has learned resilience. Those who have experienced loss have learned the value of presence. Those who have failed have learned the power of new beginnings. If you look at your story with the right perspective, you'll see that your marks don't diminish you. They make you unique. But here's an important detail. Accepting the past doesn't mean resigning to it. Acceptance is not resignation. It's freedom. Many people fear accepting what happened because they think it means giving up. But there's a crucial difference between the two. Resignation says, there's nothing more I can do. Acceptance says, this happened, but it doesn't define me. Just like a Kintsugi artisan takes the shattered pieces of a broken object and turns them into something beautiful, you can take the fragments of your story and rebuild them in a new way. And you know what's even more interesting? Your pain may be what connects you most to others. Think about the people who have made the biggest impact on your life. How many of them had stories of overcoming hardship? How many shared their struggles authentically? When we try to hide our flaws and scars, we isolate ourselves. But when we have the courage to embrace our humanity, we create real connections. Philosopher Alain de Botton once said, "The pain you hide separates you from the world. The pain you share connects you to it." Kintsugi teaches us exactly that. What once seemed like a weakness can actually be what connects us to others on a deeper level. We don't need to erase our past to move forward, we just need to change the way we see it. Kintsugi is a beautiful metaphor, of course. But in practice, how do we turn this Japanese philosophy, which finds beauty in scars, into something truly applicable in everyday life? Because accepting our flaws is a good start, but let's be honest, it's not enough. We have to do something with them. Make the cracks not just visible, but strong. And maybe, just maybe, even valuable. To start, let's talk about self-acceptance. Because let's face it, we are masters of self-sabotage. How many times have you caught yourself dwelling on a past mistake, comparing yourself to someone who seems to have life all figured out, feeling like you're less because of your imperfections? Kintsugi invites us to look at all of this and ask, what if, instead of hiding these marks, I made them part of what makes me unique? Self-acceptance doesn't happen overnight, but it begins when we change the way we talk to ourselves. Now, what about difficult experiences? Because everyone goes through them. Some are just minor stumbles while others knock us down for a long time. But if there's one thing Kintsugi teaches us, it's that cracks can be strengthened. The key is shifting how we view pain. Asking yourself, what did this teach me? How can I grow from it? Is there someone who might learn from my story? It's no coincidence that many people find purpose in sharing their experiences. Pain doesn't have to be just suffering, it can become wisdom. And strengthening yourself is an essential part of this process. In Kintsugi, accepting a broken piece isn't enough. The gold that seals the cracks has to provide structure, not just appearance. In life, that means building habits that support us. Writing about your experiences can help you process them better. Meditation and mindfulness teach us how to handle difficult emotions without being consumed by them. The body also has memory, so movement, whether it's a sport, dance, or even a simple walk, can be a form of release. And of course, seeking professional help is like placing the right tools in the hands of an artisan. Some rebuildings require support. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, healing doesn't follow a linear path. Some days, everything feels fine, and others, the same old wounds return as if nothing has changed. But every small step forward counts. In the end, what hurt you doesn't define who you are, but how you rebuild yourself. That can define your future. Life breaks us. Sooner or later, we all fall, crack, and shatter into pieces that seem impossible to put back together. Some of these scars are visible, others remain hidden, silent, etched into memory, body, and soul. But they are there, shaping who we are, whether we like it or not. Kintsugi teaches us something powerful. Our marks are not flaws. They are part of what makes us unique. Every pain, every mistake, every loss can be redefined. It can become a golden thread in our story. A testament that not only did we survive, but we also found beauty in the parts we once tried to erase. Maybe you've spent years trying to hide your scars, pretending certain things never happened. But what if, instead of hiding them, you illuminated them? What if, instead of denying the past, you embraced every detail as an essential part of your journey? Because acceptance is not the same as resignation. Acceptance means looking back without resentment. It means understanding that your story, with all its imperfections, holds value. If an artisan can turn a broken vase into a work of art, you can also transform your pain into something greater, into wisdom, into growth, into inspiration for others. Because true strength is not about never breaking, it's about rebuilding yourself as many times as necessary. And now I ask you, what are the cracks in your story that you can turn into gold? If you made it this far, thank you for joining me in this reflection. I know that looking back at your own past isn't always easy. Sometimes it hurts, sometimes we'd rather avoid it. But if this video helped you see your story in a different light, then it was already worth it. Now tell me, if you could apply Kintsugi to a moment in your life, which one would it be? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this message resonated with you, you know what to do. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. Because sometimes a new perspective is all we need to take the next step. Oh, and since we're talking about transforming the way we see the past, there's another video popping up on your screen right now that will challenge your view on life even more. But I won't spoil the surprise. I'll just say it's worth watching. Click on it, and I'll see you in the next video.